Life is hectic, demanding, and doesn't stop. When honest with ourselves, we must confess we often don't know what the hell we're doing. The Larkcast is an ongoing conversation about the inclusive and mischievous nature of God's presence through the lens of all the things that make up this phenomenon we refer to as life. Astonishing grace and refreshing honesty collide right here for your weekly encouragement.
Good morning, all of you Larkers. You're going to see a new face today, and we are so excited to have her on. This is Dani, and she is from Raleigh, North Carolina, and I cannot wait for you to hear her story. It is so exciting for me to have another mother on. So, Russ, how did you meet Dani? She's got like a really unique story for how she came on.
Yeah.
How did we meet?
Instagram message.
See y'all,
so, yeah.
Reach out. Slide into those DMs, everybody.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah, we've taken a hiatus. I have from social media, which is going to be kicking back up here. But back when I think we were on there and just trying to get some trying to get some relief out there and all the religious noise of this world. I think you reached out, right? You can tell the story probably better than I can.
I think the algorithm knew that I needed some relief. The algorithm worked in my favor, and a reel popped up, and actually since then I don't think there's ever been another reel that's ever popped up of you guys that I haven't gone out of my way to look at myself. So this was just a reel just popped up, and I took you guys at your word and gave you a call.
I love that.
You may have actually announced your number in that reel for all, and I was like, okay, who are these crazy guys that are putting their actual phone numbers out online? That's casting a really big net, and you might get some crazy folks.
Oh yeah.
Which I was one of them.
Yes. Welcome
now,
to the
did this
club.
reel happen to be in his like really cool truck on a beautiful sunlit day?
I think he was in a truck. Or he may have even just. I know that there was beads of sweat on his forehead. He was outside. Okay?
When you're bald, that happens.
There was beads of sweat. It was outside. And I can't even tell you other than whatever you were speaking from your heart was resonating in my heart. And I was like, this is the truth. And then I got on your podcast, just started listening immediately. Like, who is this person? Why is he saying these things? Offering language that I had been desperately searching for to understand my own experience within the church. And it was like, wow, I'm not alone. There is a community out here.
Man, that actually does my heart well. Does my heart good.
Yeah.
Just you finding, I guess, for me it's been a long journey. I know that this is your story, so I don't want to get in all of mine. I'll just say that it's been a long road to try to figure out, like, and what is this thing, LARK?
Yeah.
Because it can go a million different directions, and there's so many things to talk about, so many things I feel like to undo in the religious landscape of today. But if it could be known for anything, it would be hopefully relief.
Yeah.
And if people find anything, it would be friendship.
Oh yeah. And
that helps you live with relief.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I wanted to say too. Like, originally I came to you all looking for content and information. I did not realize that you all would become friends. And you actually meant it. You know, it wasn't a word to pull people in, you know, to manipulate people's desire for belonging and friendship. I actually found that when you said friendship, you actually meant it. And so yeah, so your words and actions were lining up, and that was super important for me in a space where I was seeing a lot of contradictions, a lot of hypocrisy, a lot of a lot of promises that would fall. And yeah, just
Amen.
very, very, very grateful.
Amen.
Mm-hmm.
Amen. And through conversations, you know, connecting with you and your family, like over this last year, that has, and just your story and just watching the story even unfold of the not just the finding of freedom, but the sharing it. I was talking with Sarah and I'm like, okay, we kicked off some of these stories on the podcast, you know, with just me getting a chance to really talk with Sarah through her story, which is beautiful and amazing and just God's grace, right? Through and through. And then a friend of
Yeah.
ours, James, and then I'm like, okay, we have this long list of people to have on here, and your name came to the top of the list. Like this is a story that I think would do our listeners. It would bring a lot of joy to our listeners, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope so.
No pressure. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I am learning that there is no pressure. Um, I love that you are offering just that gift of freedom. Um, not performance. Really just to be yourself. Because I know I'm not going to do this perfectly. Um, and share your story. It's complicated. You know, there's a lot of different narratives too right now that I could grab hold of to understand my story. um and so this is kind of an episode. And I welcome anyone, to reach out to me too. Instagram, I could even leave my phone number if there's any part, if there's any parts of my story that you want me to get more in the weeds, to help understand or unpack maybe some of the things you're thinking about. I don't know. Speaking to the audience, I guess. Yeah, because there's a lot, this is 36 years worth that a podcast can't really contain all of.
Right.
But yeah, but we'll try.
Well, that's why we have Sarah.
All right, Sarah,
'Cause
work your
Sarah,
magic.
Sarah
Work your
Hey.
magic,
meets
Sarah.
people. I've seen Sarah meet people like left and right. One of my favorite quick stories about Sarah is in Nashville.
Oh no.
Krista and I, we vacation once a year with Chad and Sarah. That's sort of been like our thing here the last few
Yeah.
years. And a couple years back, we hit Nashville. I remember that. And we got to go to this just iconic old school, right? Like honky tonk, Robert's Western World. It might be my favorite space on earth.
Yep. I
Like
still
there's
talk
just something
about
about
it this
just
day.
being there, fried bologna sandwich, cheap beer, great music, old
Oh.
shit hanging on the walls, right? It's
Yep.
just
Right. Next Lark
unreal.
event.
And we're there like, I don't know, we probably weren't even there 30 minutes. And Sarah's, struck up a conversation, which I do as well. Everywhere I go, I love to talk with people. I think the difference is it was 15 minutes later. This woman's like crying like she's on Dr. Phil. As Sarah's already like got in like the depth of her story, zoned in this like just a straight up like therapy session starts happening.
Yeah.
And then what's funny is like you'll leave and go somewhere else, and it's like, you meet the waitress and you talk for a minute, or you meet a bartender, and where the rest of
The
us are like,
Uber
yeah,
driver.
dude, yeah. And instead, Sarah's over in the corner praying with him, giving her her phone number. And
I did.
so, yeah. So when we said, we need to do stories on the podcast, because it's just, there's nothing there. To me, there is no more powerful teaching platform, method, right? Strategy, whatever you want to throw in there, in the world, and stories, especially real ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, if somebody's gonna get your story out, it's my nosy friend, Sarah Mazzaro.
I just love people. They all have such good
It's a
stories, no
gift.
matter their background. It's
Yeah.
just, and within
I think that's why
tattooing,
you
just,
became a tattoo artist, was just so you could talk with people
it
for
was.
hours and they can't go anywhere.
They're stuck and I have to finish their artwork. They can't leave. They have to sit with me. And it's honestly the addiction to my work. Like, I love art, but to be able to sit with people and get to know their stories, and you just start finding these little sparkles throughout their story. And you're like, how's your relationship with your mom? And it's like, boof, and this wall breaks down and you get to hear like everything that built up to who they are today. And Danny, you have a similar story. Like, we get to know you now, and there's already been amazing rumors of your karaoke skills, which we'll get to that. But it's like, well,
Mm.
why is she singing karaoke, and why is she at a bar? Like, where did you come from? And like, did you sing growing up? And it's like, once you hear the story now, you really start to get to the underlying, like, what got you there. And
Right.
I know that your story written up to this point has so many twists and turns and a lot of depth. And I know you're still working through a lot of those areas. But if you could give us the intro to yourself and what you just want
Yeah.
us to know about you, and if you could just take off that story, we just want to listen. Like, we just want to, when I'm tattooing somebody, the biggest tool I've ever found is just sit and listen, and listen in the awkward silence, listen through the tears, because it's coming. Like, those words are coming and that story's unfolding, and it's just beautiful magic that happens in the end.
Yeah. 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 So I would love to do that. And I'm really thankful for the opportunity to be able to do this. Yeah, so you got my name. I'm from out here in Raleigh, North Carolina. Um, I am the oldest daughter of parents who worked within the International Mission Board. So I grew up a TCK, third culture kid. I grew up in Cambodia. My parents, we left from North Carolina when I was 8, moved to Cambodia, spent 8 to about 15 there. Did some time in boarding school, did some time in Thailand with different work that my dad was doing with tsunami relief. So kind of Southeast Asia was where we were working. I could talk for forever about my time growing up overseas. It's a huge part of my life and has shaped the person that I am today. There's not enough time to talk about all of that.
Just tell me about the food.
Yeah, so
No, I'm just kidding.
I grew up on a lot of rice, obviously. Out there's lots of rice fields, lots of rice farmers. It's a staple of that country, rice is. So rice, lots of stir fry, not as spicy, more sweet and savory than Thailand. Thailand's a lot of there's a lot of spice in their dishes. So you're going to get a different cashew chicken in Cambodia than you will in Thailand. There's going to be a lot more red peppers in Thailand. Yeah. Grew up eating a lot of stir fry. And my kids now, like, speaking to how it shaped me, we have rice probably 4 times a week. And whatever leftover white rice I've made turns into fried rice. And we have a lot of stir fry. And they're like, Mom, can we please have American food? Like, please, like, just give us hamburgers and hot dogs. And, um, you know, um, but yeah, my kids are growing up in America, going to public school. I was homeschooled, the majority of my life. I did spend 1 year, at a boarding school. Um, and then, after that year, that was my junior year, we came back to the States. My parents were on furlough. And we came back to the States my senior year of high school. And I graduated at a small school in Travelers Rest, South Carolina. That was my first experience of public school. That was a very interesting experience comparing to my international boarding school years and then homeschool years, which weren't always how you think about homeschool now. Like if you are a mom who's homeschooling your children, um, my experience of homeschool may be a little bit different than, than what we have here with co-ops and, so with there being a little more community, a little more, uh, like being surrounded by peers and things like that. So it was mostly just me and my siblings being homeschooled by my mom, um, in a village um, in Cambodia. I have memories, of that. Um, yeah. So we came back, and you can, ask questions as you feel. Um, but we came back for furlough in 2006, I think. Yeah, I graduated 2007 from Travelers Rest. And then my parents went back overseas. So, and this is kind of typically how this works when your parents are missionaries. I mean, they were still working with the IMB, so their job assignment was in Cambodia. So once your kids have graduated from high school, sort of the idea is that they're going to go to college, and that course of my life was pretty set. So I went to North Greenville University in 2008. Which is a Southern Baptist school. The other thing with my parents working within the IMB is that for MKs, one of the benefit for us with our parents working with that organization is that they will pay for our schooling. So as long as we're at a Southern Baptist school. So yeah.
I
So
have a question.
yeah. Please.
So when you were 8, you moved overseas. You're
Yeah.
the oldest. Were any
Mhm.
of your siblings at this point also born in the States yet?
Okay. So yeah. So there's 7 of us all together. Um, the ones who went overseas the first time would have been me, my brother, sister, and then another brother who was 18 months at the time. So there was 4 of us who were born in the States and then went overseas. Then we
Okay.
had 2 that were born in Thailand, and then 1 that was born in the States during a furlough.
Okay. And
Yeah.
then being the oldest, and then they went back, and now you're headed off, like you're a senior year, and then you head off to college. Were
Mhm.
you the only sibling left in the States at that
Yeah,
time?
so at that time I was the only sibling who was left.
Mm.
And you can imagine, I've spent all of my years growing up overseas building relationships with people that eventually I would leave. And then my early childhood, we left our family back in the States to go overseas. So coming back, and then being left, um, which sounds very harsh and was
Yeah.
very, very difficult, which it was very, very difficult.
I
And then
bet.
trying to figure out, where you belong, how you fit in into this new culture, and really having to navigate that all on your own, with not a
Right.
lot of support from family because of the choices that were made to remove us, from a lot of those family support systems. So coming back, I mean, I probably suppressed a lot of that, which I learned how to do as a child to deal with loss and to deal with constant transition and moving and
Yeah.
constant goodbyes. There's really not a lot of time for you to grieve when you have to survive.
Right.
And and so um
Well, and up to this point, I'm assuming every relationship, even your parents, you've had this background knowledge of there's a deadline to this
yeah,
relationship. There's like,
absolutely.
yeah, I'm going to be here for a few years, but I know my parents said we're going to be leaving. And
Right. So when
so
you think about
you've
attachment,
constantly, right,
absolutely. Yeah, so there's not a lot of time to foster really deep attachments with people. Not if you want to protect yourself from the massive pain
right,
of leaving or being left behind.
right.
And I learned that probably as a young child. And um, I think probably just how we are wired as humans, to survive. Um, I think my body worked really well for me, in helping me through all of that. Um,
You
but
adapted.
I adapted, yes. Now, eventually, um, I think our bodies are like, we need to deal with some of this stuff. And I'm getting very ahead of my story. Um,
But
and
with
and that
ingrained
work
within
began.
us,
Yeah.
is a sense of belonging,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
obviously we'll hit on that too, but
Mhm.
it's in
Yeah.
our nature to have that community that we can trust won't leave, will be there, will support us. So,
Yeah. Oh
sorry,
yeah, this
I was
this
just like trying
very
to
no,
add
that's
that.
helpful. That's very helpful. Yeah. This experience very much shaped my values. Even my desire for deep, authentic community and belonging and
Right.
support. I think you realize, wow, these are things that I need. Growing up, I there was this a longing for friendship, a
Yeah.
longing to be known. I was very jealous of people who went from kindergarten all the way to high school and knew those same people their entire life.
Right.
Just
Right.
that structure, the stability, um, growing with someone, you know, um, that was something that I would see on TV. Um, Friends was a huge thing that
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
that I would watch and just be like, I want that, this
Yeah.
type of support, this, you know, yeah, just the beauty of that, of and the security of at the end of the day, it's like I've got my friends, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, and yeah, so a lot of the choices that were made really kept us from 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 community where we could really flourish and grow and find ourselves and see how we fit um into those spaces. Yeah,
But in a
I
different dynamic, like you're in these countries and you see
hmm
their entire community just
hmm
immersed within caring for each other and being
Oh
together.
yeah,
From the little I know of, other countries outside of America. America is so
right.
independent. Um,
Right. Oh
and
yeah, yeah.
yes,
So I have always had like this view of like what the culture in the States is like, how my values were shaped by the culture of Cambodia, how life was lived there, um, where there was very little that people had, but they had each other.
right.
Um, and yeah, I think for me in the States, one of the things, and that's what we call it. We say coming back to the States. Um, yeah, it helped. comparing the two, the contrast of the two, made me feel a little like sad, just sad for, and
But
wanting to
also the hunt to duplicate,
cultivate,
right?
yes, wanted to
Right.
cultivate and foster something like that I experienced overseas, in this culture. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like everybody who goes like, if you've gone that, modern expression, is what I call it, of church. Basically like
Mm-hmm.
what we all see around us, right? We we've grown up in it, so we've sort of been taught like, well, this must have always just been the way, but it's not. It's
Right.
actually a very modern concept. It's not
Mm-hmm.
anything that you see Jesus doing or the early church. And I think when you plug into that with all those ups and downs, I've noticed people who go overseas for like that 1 week, right, mission trip somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
especially in a culture like what you're talking about,
Mm-hmm.
Asia, I know South America, Central America, you you see this communal living.
Mm-hmm.
And although they have nothing, they seem to live with this immense happiness that comes and freedom that comes from the dependence upon one another.
Right.
And
Yeah.
and you're like, man, I want that. And so we come back, and of course, you've got many church leaders who have created lots of small group curriculums trying to
Mm-hmm.
emulate
Mm-hmm.
that, but it just,
Yeah.
well, it just doesn't happen, and it's sad
Right.
because like you see it, you want it, and just very difficult to cultivate in a culture that's just not in line with it.
Yeah. 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 The values are
I can't
different.
imagine, I guess what I was
And
saying, I just can't imagine like growing up in it for years and then
right.
going like, oh,
Right.
now I'm here and my family left,
Right.
and
Right.
oh shit.
And yeah, yeah. And I think too, like kind of what you're touching on is like, I've seen pieces of that here, but they were manufactured. Like it's a manufactured
Yeah.
system that we're trying to put in place to get something, where, yeah, I mean, I saw, um, like I saw, and this is sad, this became my very normal. I saw starving children begging for food, sniffing glue to suppress hunger in their bodies.
Mm.
Um, these things are they shape you. They help you to discern what's like meaningless, what we're chasing after that is just really meaningless and actually not providing anything of value or worth to us as human beings. You see people with absolutely nothing really operating in I think wisdom of God, um, in shaping, in having an authentic community of support because, and a reliance on each other as individuals because of a lack of something. Where,
Mm.
in the Western culture, we have access to so much, and so much convenience and comforts that which is really an illusion that we don't actually think we need people. We don't think that we need each other.
Right.
And it
Right.
really fosters this independence, and really it's actually making us sick and isolating us from one another.
Yeah.
And yeah, so yeah, I can see that these things that promise convenience and ease are actually not benefiting
It's
us.
it's sniffing the glue,
Mhm.
right?
It's
It's
sniffing the
sniffing the glue.
glue.
Yeah.
It's
It's
suppressing what we
yeah,
truly need.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then you have so many young adults now, especially in the tattoo shop, who are like, I just moved here. Like, I'm really just trying to find community.
Mm-hmm,
And the go-to for years was, well, you should join a church. And then,
mm-hmm,
like you said, it's manufactured and there's something to get out of it. And they end up
yeah,
leaving because it's like, well, I didn't belong or they didn't accept me or it wasn't what I was looking for. And so, I love that Lark's equipping us to find that friendship organically in other areas outside of that. But
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
That was, I've never thought of that, Sarah. And that it is sniffing the glue. It's a lot easier to see a child sniffing glue with an extended stomach from starving. It's really hard for that same veil to be lifted, for us to be able to see that we're kind of doing the same thing. We're actually starving,
right.
but we feel that we're fed. We're
Yep.
thinking that we're fed, but we're actually starving. Yeah, I've never thought about that.
Mm.
Yeah, I think that was really helpful for me.
You
That it's
you
Yeah.
led me there.
it's the same thing. Yeah, it really is the same thing. Um,
It's probably going to make its way into a future book that Lark puts out. It's a great
Sniffing the
analogy.
glue.
I'll give you credit.
anyway,
I'll give you credit the first time. Someone said will be like the second time, and then like by the third, it's mine. But that's
yeah,
just kind of how
yeah,
we Christians roll.
yeah.
That's how it goes. That's
But
how it goes.
Oh man.
Okay.
yeah,
So you
yeah,
are off to college
yeah.
and you
So
hated cold North Carolina. So where'd you head off
absolutely
to?
did. Yeah. So that was a very difficult time. Okay. Hurt people hurt people. Okay,
Yep.
so very unhealthy, very emotionally unintelligent. I mean, let's talk about my toxic years. So, I mean, let's not talk about them, but I'm just, letting you know. Super difficult. Yeah, so I was there at North Greenville University, um, not attending class. This was I was just living there. Um, could not handle the cold weather. Also, growing up, moving and all the time was really my normal. It's like people who are used to chaos, chaos is their normal. They chase the chaos.
Yeah.
Um, so I was happy to leave. Fresh start always feels better. So I decided to apply to California Baptist, CBU, California Baptist University, in 2008. And I didn't know this. My husband now, at the time, he was back to his freshman year. His parents grew up in the IMB, so kind of same deal.
Mm.
They were going back overseas. He came back his freshman year to go to college. Really, really difficult transition transitioning back into this culture, similar to me. Um, he was looking at California Baptist University also. I can't even tell you how I heard about that university. Um,
Yeah, I've
but
never heard of it.
yeah, but it was an option. So it's in Riverside, California.
The weather
Uh,
would get my attention.
20 minutes, yeah,
Yeah.
20 minutes outside of LA. So yeah, we that year both not knowing that each other was doing that, and we had grown up together, good friends with his brother and sister. I knew his parents well; they were family friends of ours. His sister's my sister's best friend. He was also transferring to CBU, so we both transferred there. It was just an easy, immediate friendship. I did have a close friend of mine who grew up overseas, whose parents were no longer with the IMB, who was in Riverside, and she was also going to be attending that space as a freshman. So Connor and I were coming in as sophomores. She was coming in as freshmen. And MKs typically um, find each other and in an airport, at a school, we somehow find each other. So we all found each other there together. Conrad and I, like I said, easy friendship. neither of us knew anyone. We knew each other. And so we started dating pretty quickly. After that, I had always had a crush on him. So that was easy for me. I was like,
Yeah.
Nothing manufactured there.
nothing manufactured there. There was no hidden agenda. Yeah, and so soon after dating, found out we were pregnant with our oldest, Jude. And we realized we wouldn't be able to stay there any longer. We eloped at a little courthouse. Can't even tell you where it was. Huntington Beach, maybe. And then decided what was best for us was to go to the next school in North Carolina, which is where I'm from, which is where my dad went to seminary before moving overseas. So, and my parents were going to be on furlough. So it had been a few years. My parents were going to be on furlough, and it just made sense. I'm pregnant. We had no connections in Kansas, which is where he's from. And so we came this direction. Started school at Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary for him. They have housing on campus, so we had a little apartment that we lived in. Yeah, and then that's what brought us back to where I'm originally from. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So he continued school. He graduated in 2016. We did a 10-year track to get that college degree because all the while he was in school, I was having babies. So after Jude, we had 4 more kids, and they were pretty much back to back to back. So at one point, when I was having my third, and we had 3 children under the age of 2. So Jude was still 2 when I was having baby number 3 for a month before he turned 3. So we had 3 children in diapers. And I think that's when we realized this is crazy. I think people plan this better. Like, have we actually thought through this? Now, I think he had, but he was kind of following my lead. So like, I'm the oldest
I
of
bet he
7.
was.
I'm the oldest of 7. And growing up, I don't know if this was an original thought of my own, but what I saw for me as a woman was to be a wife and mother. That was my greatest ambition in life, to be a wife and mother. And so yeah, the more kids, the better, to foster that identity that I held. Yeah, so he graduated, and stop me at any point if you want to, talk further about anything. He graduated in 2016. We were able to buy a house, which is the one that we're living in now, a townhouse, which was a really, really big deal. So as MKs, we literally came back with nothing. Okay. No vehicle, no money. Our parents were missionaries. My parents actually sold everything and went overseas. So they really had nothing to give us. So when we came back to the States, it's like you're just being dropped off, not knowing how to navigate anything in this culture. I mean, I didn't know how to open a bank account. I didn't know. I had a hard time just ordering food in a public restaurant. So if that gives you some, I don't know, to think about as far as what that was like for us. And similar to him, like I got my license when I was 18. I didn't have the typical American, like slow and steady progression into adulthood. It was just like, boom, Cambodia to here. I'd never worked a day in my life. So I hadn't had a lot of experiences to really know how to navigate anything at all. Conrad was extremely safe. He was going to take care of me. Was the idea that I had in my mind. And he did. When we got pregnant with Jude, he made it his life's ambition to provide for us. Sacrificed so much, and worked super, super hard, went to school to provide for us a life, for his kids and for me.
Amen.
Yeah. So grateful for him. But then also
big shout out to Mr. C.
Yeah, big shout out to Mr. C. Yeah, so in 2000, very wise with finances. In 2016, we were able to get out of seminary housing, which we thought would never happen, and actually own our own space here in Wake Forest, a little townhouse right behind the power lines.
That's a country song right there.
It's actually
right behind the power lines.
Okay, and hey, hold on. I want to go ahead and make this announcement. I am working on an album that's going to be called Under the Power Lines, so that's mine. Don't take it.
Look at there. I didn't even know that. As soon as you said that, I was like, that literally sounds like a country song. Man, we finally bought a house.
Yeah.
Praise Jesus. This thing's behind the power lines.
Nobody can build behind us.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. And so we've been living here. All right. So I need to go back a little bit. So we started at Southeastern Theological Seminary. We were 20 years old. Okay. So 21 years old. So we kind of grew up. Obviously we grew up in the Southern Baptist kind of world, International Mission Board, all of that. And then as children, got married, came to Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary, and zero community, already have one kid. And one of the requirements for going to this school is that you have to be a member of a church. So you have to be a member of a Southern Baptist church. Like that's one of the rules. And they actually want to see that you're a member, and you have to show proof that you are a member. So
Jesus made people do that.
Yeah. Now, and I want for the audience, I knew nothing. Okay. So I am literally taking everyone's word. There is no critical thinking that has taken place in my brain, probably ever. So we are doing all of the things that are required of us, growing up, you obey authority, you submit to the rules that the authority has placed before you, and you respect all of that and trust all of that. Don't question any of those things. So so we started going to school. So we immediately became members of a small church called North Wake, and we were there from 2009 until last year, so like 2024. So I think it was like close to 15 years that we were there.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think in all of this, as like a woman and mother, my stirring questions are just like, or I guess observations too, is everyone is driving your car and you are in the back seat. It's your life. It's Dani's
Mhm.
life, but everyone's driving the seat. And now the first time you take it into your own hands, now this newborn child is going to be driving your seat. And you aspired to be that, but like you just said, like the whole critical thinking there wasn't something to even be ever encouraged or allowed. And now you're still popping out kids, and you said by kid number 3 you're like, hang on. It like, I guess for me, like, when did the spark of being like, is this, I guess a few things. It's just like,
Yeah.
are your kids supplying the community and belonging that you were then being able to create within you and Conrad and like that own unit? But was it still enough to then start sparking these interests of like, you've never worked, people have driven your car, you're now a mother of 3 up to this point, and
Right.
and then eventually 5, Conrad is taking care of you and taking off, not leaving you truly a whole lot of room to say like, what does Dani as a woman and individual want to do? And that critical thinking to start popping in, to start questioning everything almost.
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
For me, becoming a mother is obviously a gift, right? But I also quickly realized it wasn't something I wanted to define myself by. That's just my own personality. It
Yeah.
wasn't enough for me. And I was a stay-at-home mom. And I like, my cup was draining. And I finally started pursuing tattooing. And literally, my husband, within a few months, was like, you're back. Like this
Yeah.
spark, this joy, this drive. And now I'm more intentional with my kids, and it gave me that sense. So I guess I'm,
Yeah.
it's probably even rhetorical, but I'm just watching and I'm like, at some point, that little spark of curiosity or the questions or the critical thinking, I'm
Yeah.
sure has to pop in.
Yeah. 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 That's really helpful. Yeah. So, um, there was not really a sense of self, that I had growing up. What you mentioned, like, someone always kind of driving the car. I really didn't know that I had any autonomy. I didn't really know that I, as a person, um, could disagree. I think part of that is the messaging that I received as a woman, to submit, to not ask questions. I know as a young child that would have gotten me in trouble.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So there was not a lot of identity. Most of my identity was enmeshed with other people, who those
Yeah.
people were. So I was looking at those people to know who I need to be. And so my actions were always towards what had been modeled for me, not asking a question, what do I want? In fact, that question, if you've grown up um, in an environment like mine, that is not a safe question. That's going to get you into a lot of trouble.
Like, why am I getting emotional? And then you got emotional.
Yeah.
I'm over here feeling
I'm
left out. Like I
sorry.
need to get emotional.
Like, I'm just sorry.
You just
Like,
don't get it, Russ. You don't know what it's like to be a woman.
Hey, that is true.
Evangelicalism.
That is true. Oh man.
Yeah.
I'm really
Yeah.
sorry. I know you probably don't even need to hear it, but
Yeah.
it breaks my heart. And especially like if you're raising any girls too, there's this drive of like, my daughter
Well,
is so stubborn, right? And
yeah.
I'm like, but thank God, because she has this identity that just rules our whole house. And I'm like, oh man, she's going to be something. But to see the lack of that
Right.
in a
Right.
daughter would just be really hard. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, anyway.
Hmm.
Yeah. And that's a lot of the work that, I've had to do, like over the last 5 years, is people speak into me the goodness that they saw in me of who I
Yeah.
was, that I didn't know I had been suppressing in order to stay
Mhm.
safe. I didn't realize how much I was masking. I didn't realize how much I was not showing up as my true self, for
Yeah.
fear of rejection. Um, these are all things that people with like complex PTSD kind of have to deal with on a
Yeah.
daily basis when you've grown up in what I would name now as emotionally abusive um, um, spaces. Um, and so yeah, so there has been a lot of work. Um, and I want to talk about that because you know recently um like the Lord really gave me an image of actually being with me, like through this whole journey of being born to where I am now. um i used to I used to be like, if you were there with me, why didn't you stop it? Like why
Mm.
did you allow this to happen? um and these are things that are really difficult to explain, but it was like recently it was like I had an image of him being with me, experiencing it with me. I was not alone, and I didn't ask the question, why didn't you stop it? I actually felt peace that he was actually with me. I've heard victims of like horrendous abuse be able to have experienced like horrible traumas in their life and say he was with me, and it's like the veil was lifted. They didn't ask the question of why didn't he stop it. It was like, oh my gosh, he's never left my side. Like he loved me the entire time. And that is where I am beginning to see this trickle of grace um that has been actually a part of my story, whether I knew it was there or not. Slowly, I feel like God is, as my father is, has comforted me, as he's helped me to see his presence throughout the whole story.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
which has been so healing for me. It actually, it hasn't made me mad and blamed him, like, well, then why did you let it happen? It's been almost a comfort to me, which is interesting, to think about. And his being able to empathize with me, and I think show up for me in a way um, that helps me understand freedom versus
Wow.
control. And yeah, which has been really, really, really beautiful. But yeah, okay, so you asked like sort of when did that happen for you? So we were at North Wake for several years. It's the church that I mentioned. I told you I married into the most beautiful family of all time. Like you should all be jealous. um, to a husband who has the most, she's passed away now, but had just the most beautiful mother-in-law, um, that you could imagine, um, who really actively um, showed me what grace looks like in action. Not just
Wow.
in words, not just in words, because obviously like you would think, right, that as a child growing up in a family who's doing the work of spreading the good news, that message of grace shouldn't have been lost. Um, but it really was for me. Um, what I was really picking up on was conditional and transaction and that sort of thing. And so there was a huge turning point for me in understanding grace. Obviously after my husband and I um, were pregnant, before getting married, and just seeing the love that she extended towards us, and the lack of judgment, and even the celebration of us, like this prodigal son coming home, like doesn't even remember all of this stuff. Like, I just love my kids. And so, you know, I really started to see these things as they were being acted out in my life. So, you know, one was from her. And then you know, there have been stories and people along the way that have offered relief to me, and that helped me to slowly begin to see things, to help for me to know who I am. And you know, yeah, which has been really, really helpful. So we were at North Wake. I actually heard at North Wake for the first time, like, what grace actually means. At our church, my pastor gave a sermon and talked about grace, and, you know, explained what grace is. And I began to have more of a lens for the gospel, and how to see life, and how to experience life through this reality. So my husband was out Southeastern. He was beginning to be noticed by different professors and kind of pursued for like discipleship things. And he started helping to teach a seminary, or I'm sorry, a Sunday school class. We called it Life Change, on theology for the everyday believer. And so I started getting a little more theology, a little more understanding of doctrines and that kind of thing. I really, like, seriously, I know I grew up in a Christian home, but I had zero knowledge of any of these things that I found in the culture that I was in at North Wake were very, very important. So I already did not fit in because I didn't know all of the teachings. So so this kind of like study through the theology for everyday believer helped me to fit in a little bit more within this context, within this culture, which you know, teaching and doctrines and you know, were very, very important. So we did that. We started leading small group. These are ways that we were finding like more belonging within the church. We started serving. Serving was a huge, huge value. So we began to serve more. Also, you know, my husband's at Southeastern. You know, they are training up pastors. So, you know, they're wanting to see people who are actually already doing those things within the church. You know, you're already showing up as a leader. You're already serving. You're leading small groups. Like, how are you going to apply to be a pastor if you weren't already willing to invest in a local body that you were a part of? So we were really on this track to go into pastoral ministry, or maybe go with the International Mission Board. Things like that. So after he graduated, though, I think we had kid number 5 at that point. And this is more, you know, a part of his story, but the trajectory of our lives just completely changed. And pastoral ministry, like pursuing a career in ministry, was not really an option for us, or something that we really felt like we were going to consider any longer. And I think for me, then, I was finding my identity as someone who was just very much going to involve myself in the local body, and serve like tirelessly within that space. And then he was beginning making steps towards working in with UPS as a driver. So anyways, I'm not sure exactly what the timeline is at this point, but he had graduated. We were looking at UPS for him, and we were just continuing to go to North Wake. So I did, I'm trying to think kind of where to go next. I very much had ambition, probably to be a part of like a women's ministry. As far as my identity, like who I am, I'm still kind of looking to all of these women and what they're doing. What a good family is, a good marriage, wife and mother. That part of my role and what I'm supposed to bring or offer is still very much in line with that idea, that narrative for a woman. But there were some things that I was really concerned about. And I brought some of those things up to some leadership. And I was asked if I wanted to be a part of an internship where they were inviting women for the first time into a pastoral internship at our church. The friend that I went to bring up some concerns, husband was the one that was going to be in charge of this internship. And so it was, him who was inviting women into it for the first time after there was an approval from the elders that women could come into a pastoral internship. Because there was a little bit of concern that within the pastoral internship, how it was shaped, for men, there would be opportunities to practice teaching. And they weren't sure if a woman would be able to practice teaching in a co-ed space. And so, because, then women would be teaching the men.
God forbid.
Yeah.
And which is honestly already shocking with a Baptist background. So I give a little bit of credit that they were humoring this idea, but still.
Yeah. And I will tell you, like at that time, I'm thinking, wow, my church is really, really progressive, and my church is super, super healthy, and my church is the best. The more I served, the more I'm trying to think about, just the best way to communicate this, but the more involved I got, I found myself feeling that I belonged more. I began to see the system and the way to get your needs met, very similar to my childhood. I saw how I needed to adapt and adjust to an environment in order to get my needs met, to find belonging, to find community, to have support. And so I began to play that game, really. I don't think I was self-aware enough at the time to understand that, as I am now with the work that I've done to kind of understand that. So anyway, I started this internship, and again, I knew absolutely nothing. Okay. So I can't even, there was embarrassment. Like I would have anxiety if somebody said, turn to the book of Lamentations. I don't know where that is in the Bible. Okay. There's a lot of embarrassment because I grew up in a missionary family. I should freaking know this, So anyway, so I'm invited into this internship. I feel completely like, well, I thought this internship was for people like me, but then I found out that there were people that I'm like, why are you in here? Like, you're already on women's ministry. Isn't this to kind of like help equip people? Like, what more equipping do you need? And so, so I found myself in this space. And then because of the books that we were reading, and this is where the critical thinking began for me. We started to read books, and we were discussing those books. And this was the first time I was in an environment where it was actually safe to bring different perspective, to discuss something and think about it critically, and have a conversation that was safe. And it's like I found out that that's one of my greatest passions was kind of in there. So none of that had really been seen in me and fostered to help me grow in that. But I found myself in a space where that was exactly what was being fostered. And so we were reading books like Delighting in the Trinity by Michael Reeves, and we were discussing those books, and my mind was just being blown as the Trinity was being explained to me, still from a beginning of separation, but yes, this knowledge was really changing me and my view of God. And there was definitely an emphasis on God as being a loving father. And so this is really, like, this point in my life was really the beginning point of kind of bringing me to the place that I am today. So this pastor, he also really helped me to see grace and love in action as well, within the boundaries of a particular thinking of things. And so, and it gave me a lot of opportunity to grow. So, I was invited to different like prayer ministries and being discipled by, the pastor of our church. And it just felt really good. It was like for the first time, I felt like I really fit in, and I was figuring out how to fit in. And I also was doing really well, like in these spaces. People were like, wow, you're really smart. Like, you're really intelligent. I didn't really know any of those things like about myself. And so I kind of continued to pursue those things that were being spoken over me. So and this is where it gets a little bit funky too. So I started reading the Bible like crazy, like everything. I needed to know everything, just became very, very voracious reader. And I was getting to these places like, and I want you to know too, like, this is before I knew that different things have been debated for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. Okay. Like salvation or spiritual gifts continuing. So I am really coming to this like a child. So every question that might sound stupid to a scholar, for me, it was like, it was the first question. So like we get to this place where it's like, Paul's like, you need to pursue prophecy. I'm like, well, what's prophecy? So and then I started to realize within my context, there are some questions that are scarier to ask than they would be in another context. So this is really a time for me of just taking in a ton of information, taking in information based on questions that I ask and the discomfort that I see on other people. I am discerning a lot of things. So I ask about this gift of prophecy. I was led I was directed to go speak to a person within our church, a wife of one of our elders, to talk about this question. I'm like, okay, sure. So we meet together. And this is, I want to explain this because this was a very, like path, right? Like I was going down one path and this completely changed me to go down a whole different course. So I go to talk to this woman about the gift of prophecy. While I was there, and this is what was told to me, I experienced a demonic attack. So I'm there to have a conversation with her, and she is there to be an authority on this matter as far as I understood. And while I was there, some unusual things happened in my body that maybe looked like a seizure. And this period lasted for a few hours, and multiple people came to the house and were praying over me. And how it was described was that I had a deliverance, and that I was actually saved for the very, very first time. So this was a very, very confusing time for me.
I bet.
I had a
Yeah.
lot of people telling me how to understand what took place.
Right.
People said I need to get baptized. People were trying to control the whole testimony and telling me what I needed to say, because there was an idea that there were other people like me who had grown up in the church, who were never saved, who had maybe professed a belief in Jesus, but it was actually just, it wasn't real. It wasn't genuine. Okay. This really freaked me out, because I was like, hold up, we're talking about the gospel here. And now you're telling me it like this. There's no assurance of salvation then for anyone. There is no hope, because I have journals of myself as a kid where I am talking to God. Was I not saved then? I was baptized when I was 5, and I'm okay to think that, anyways, I just started having really big questions. Well, then what is even belief? Well, then what is faith? What is any of this? And for the next couple of years, I was wrestling. I'm wrestling my everyone's telling me what I experienced within a Southern Baptist context. So all of the voices are it's in a very little bubble. There's no outside voices looking in to help me understand this. I can only understand it within the Southern Baptist context. And then, my husband's mother, my mother-in-law, is dying of cancer. And COVID hits, and lots of different tragedies within the church we experienced. And all of the community that I had in that internship just went away. There is absolutely nothing. And now, there is no more people for me to go to really help me to understand a lot of what had taken place. So I'm trying to think. After all of that, I became very, very burnt out. I was trying really hard to be a hero within the church that we were a part of. I was trying to foster, community, and we were small group leaders, and I was trying to disciple several women, and just doing all of the things that I'm told to do by the leaders, because I so much, when I experienced what they told me was a deliverance, I also, in that moment of chaos and confusion, there was a divine love that I felt that made me think everything was going to be okay, even though all the faces around me were like, this person looks crazy, she is crazy. There was a love, and I could not I could not deny that, without just completely lying. And there was also there was something there that I felt that was an immense gratitude that I had experienced that, because it felt very undeserving, and I felt like I had been kind of awakened to a spiritual reality that I had not even been aware of. And was able to discern things in a way that I had never been able to. But again, I had so many voices telling me how to understand this. So I was moving in so many different directions, really probably for their approval. I didn't want them to think that their influence over me I didn't respect. And so many of these people I saw as helping me, I pursued so much of what they said was just this good life, be a small group leader, do this, do this, do this.
Yeah.
So I began to just be very, very burnt out. And I started really, really wrestling with my faith. I never really struggled with the assurance of my salvation. That wasn't a fear that I had. I was having a really hard time with how they were communicating faith and what I saw as a lack of faith. And that was more so what I was wrestling with. I was wrestling with words and actions lining up. And then there were some different things that I was experiencing within the church from leadership that led me to lots of different books, like When Narcissism Comes to Church. I read a book, basically just about toxic leadership. There were some different things like that I was experiencing at the same time with leadership that were causing me a lot of confusion as far as how I met Jesus in that internship in the Gospels, which was this shepherd that was humble and ate with sinners. And so I'm wrestling with so much, and my faith becoming my own. I started asking a lot of questions. And I continued to feel a little unsatisfied with a lot of how those questions were being answered. And then I started to feel a little bit like I was getting pushback, or that I was being treated as if I was someone who I was not. I started feeling a lot of judgment. I started to feel like I was kind of being put in a category of like these rebellious feminist women who are just out to destroy something and be divisive and be a distraction. I started to feel that it became not a safe space for me anymore to really wrestle and process a lot of the things that I was processing, or even to really be hurt by a lot of the things that I went in a very vulnerable place for me were being put on me, because it was extremely vulnerable, what I was dealing with, or what I was, all the things that I was thinking through, and just where our family was, and so after reading a lot of these books, I began to feel very validated with what I was experiencing within that space from leadership, and just from the institution in general. I picked up a book called Pagan Christianity, because in this time too, I'm asking a lot of questions. And my kids are in public school, and I'm saying, well, hey, the public school runs exactly how the church is running. What makes this a church? Like literally, there's teachers who are teaching the kids and equipping them to go out. How is this any different than what we are doing? There's a system here. There's a government that controls, making sure everything is working. And I was like, why, I'm asking like, why are we doing this within this space? That was met, with a lot of resistance as well. Me making those comparisons anyways. And that just kind of goes back to where I found that this isn't actually a very, very safe space. And when I was, thinking literally these people are my friends, and how I understood friendship to be, I realized, oh, this is not friendship. So again, it was like, we're saying these words, but in practice, it's not lining up with what we're communicating and what we're selling for you to buy into it. It's not actually how it works here. And so, and this is probably about the time where LARK, came in after I read Pagan Christianity. Super, super struggling. Everybody's telling me how I need to think about everything. And I just realized, like, and I told my husband, I'm like, you're going to have to believe for me. Cause I literally, and I never thought I would ever have any like, questioning of my faith. And then here I find myself in a position that I would have probably mocked, somebody else, for being in the same exact position. And I would have judged them for not being loyal to the church, for not being respectful of their leaders. All the things that I was being, all the ways that I was showing up to help and to serve this family. This vision that I had for a family. And I just found myself, completely defeated and feeling like I'm doing everything. Like, Lord, when are you going to show up and like do something? And like, and so I had, during this time too, I was invited to go on a mission trip, and I really want to get to these 3 stories. But I was invited to go on a mission trip, and while I was there, I was encouraged to share a brief testimony. We were in the DR, and the same pastor, he has a ministry where he is equipping Haitian pastors. And so we were there to kind of see what this ministry is. And I was invited, and me and another lady were invited to share our testimony. And I was very, very nervous. I'd never really done anything like this before, as far as like a co-ed thing. And I got up there and started weeping, because internally I'm, having a lot of things going on. And it was like the Holy Spirit just gave me this word in my head. I was supposed to speak to kind of like practically what it looks like living out your faith. And we had done several things, like community things, where we were trying to love our neighbors. And that's what they were asking me to speak to. And so I got up there, and literally a complete loss for words, and I'm just having a panic attack. And it was like the Lord just said to me, I loved you first. And I was just like, what the hell? And so I looked at these people and I was like, well, yeah, why would you be a friend to someone? And that, that's kind of the question that we're answering. And he gave me that word, I love you first, tell him that, And so I look at them and I was just like, he loved us first. you know? It's so dumb, you know? It's not even like a 3-point sermon that took me hours. And everyone just kind of started crying. I was like, you know, um, like
Ding
nothing
ding
happened.
ding.
Yeah, like literally nothing happened. Um,
Oh
um,
no, something happened.
oh yeah, yes,
Yeah.
yeah, I know. But I'm thinking, you know, from my background and from how I'm taught to perform these things and the complexity of how we make the gospel so complex, and so difficult to even grab onto, and you've got to jump through all these hoops to even get it, and which were all the things that I was doing, you know, to try to maintain this relationship that at any moment in time would I could be rejected if I did not continue to love God, love the church, and love my neighbor. And you know, just so much pressure. And it was all my whole salvation was built on my faithfulness, everything I was doing. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, this is not the gospel though. They literally told me to get me in the door that it's all about what he did. But now I'm doing everything. You know, now I'm finishing the work that he started.
Yep.
And feeling confused. You know, I've got one foot in grace and one foot over here in the works that I'm having to do to make sure grace doesn't leave me. And I'm really wrestling with all of these things. And from a lot of the books that I was reading on narcissism and transaction, I'm like, then my father is a narcissist because this is what they're describing in toxic family systems that you have to do so that you don't get rejected. So anyways, um, so that happened to me. And I want to share these stories just because this is really before Lark, actually. These things happened. Lark doesn't get credit, sorry, Jesus does. But um
Damn.
um so this thing happened, right? Where seriously it felt like a word from God like entered my brain, like tell them I loved you first. Like I loved them first. Um and which really would have sabotaged everything that we were probably about to speak to them. You know, I loved you first. So it really had nothing to do with you loving me first. I actually loved you first, so quit trying to take credit for this whole thing. And so we get back to the States. Seriously, it's just like this was in January. I don't know, probably our car broke down every single month. And I'm stranded at a light, car broke down, cell phone dies, Conrad's at work, and I don't know what to do. I get out of my car, and this is where too I'm starting in this moment in time. I'm really wrestling with leadership. I'm starting to ask a lot about leadership, why we even have leadership structures, where what are these systems? I actually see that they're continuing to hurt people, and I'm also like, why do we have a good shepherd but we need all these little shepherds um that we're supposed to submit to and obey? Like I kind of just want to bypass all of that and just go hang out with Jesus, you know?
Hmm.
And so my car breaks down. I go to a place. There's a homeless guy there. And he's got a cell phone, and I'm desperate. And he looks at me and he's like, "Are you okay? Do you need some help?" And I'm just like, "Are you kidding me? Like you're gonna ask me if I need help?"
I love this.
Um, and I'm like, "Yeah, I do. Could I please borrow your phone? My phone's dead. Like, can I call?" And he's like, "I was about to go to the bus and it's pouring rain." He was like, "Well, it started raining now, and I was about to go get the bus, like just your public transportation." He was like, "I'll catch the next one. Here, use my phone, call your husband." So I use his phone, call my husband. He goes and gets me a coffee. We're at a McDonald's. Like he's literally serving me, you know. And and then, that whole exchange was done. And he starts sharing his testimony with me. And I find out, oh wow, he believes in he's a Christian. Um, and so he goes outside and I feel like this need, I need to go like out and hug him and be like, guess what? I'm a Christian too, you know? So like I run out to him and I was like, thank you. And I just want you to know, like, I love Jesus too. And he looks at me and he was like, that's fine. Just remember, he loved you first. And literally, this had just
Dang.
happened, when I was in the DR. And when he said that to me, it was just like, like, I'm like, oh my God. Like, okay, Jesus, you are real. You're in him. He literally just repeated the word that you gave to me months ago. And I'm literally wondering if you even exist anymore because of everything I'm seeing in the church, looking exactly like the world looks like. And this homeless man just told me the truth about everything I need to know in life, that he loved me first. So that was one story that was massive. And I mean, like, that changed everything for me because I was like, I'm like, it became so cool. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, this is really, really cool. This is like supernatural stuff, like I'm kind of freaking out. And and then another thing happened. I was downtown Raleigh and I was going to this Christian conference in this, kind of known church in the area for being progressive and doing a lot of good work. And but one thing that hurt me was like when they were having this conference and bringing all these like big to-do status people within this space, they kicked all the homeless people off of their porch area before the conference started.
Mm.
And I saw that happen. And I'm just like, what? Like, if anything, invite them in for free, like it's cold. And I went downtown, like kind of to the downtown square area. And this guy, this man, who chooses to kind of live by the like homeless, it maybe, I don't know how you explain it, but like by the public transportation areas down there for like people who are kind of coming and going. And he just looks for opportunities to serve. He came up to me and he was like, hey, have you ever had um like a feeling that you should talk to somebody? And I was like, yeah. and, and he was like, can I sit with you for a minute? And I was like, yeah, that's fine. And I'm like sitting here crying because, I was kind of waiting, like, God, can you show up for me right now? Because I don't know how the church works and kicks homeless people out. Um, and so he sat with me and he was just like listening. And I'm just like, man, I'm tired of hearing this narrative about elders and shepherds and all the ways that they're protecting everybody in the community. And but it's like I see so much favoritism and and he's just like listening to me and um like I think he put his arm around me and then he gave me an umbrella and like his only umbrella. He was like, I just want to give you gifts. Um I started seeing in him like this generosity, and then he was sharing his story with me, and I was like, I'm starting to see this contrast between like the shepherds I've experienced in the church and then like this man in the town square willingly going out to serve people and just be led by the Spirit. And I'm having these massive contrasts between like leadership and how it's been modeled for me in the institutional church, and then leadership outside of a system that is free, pursuing friendship, through service and offering relief, which is what he was doing. Um, and I'm holding all of these things in tension and asking questions and aware of God's great love for me. But this last part was really, then why is the church the way that the church is? Why do we have buildings? Why do we have these structures, these systems, this authority? Like, here the Father met me through two unlikely individuals that I would ever think would come and be Jesus for me in the flesh. And and in contrast to what I'm seeing in the institution, um that seems to be helping some and not others. And that's probably about the time that I read Pagan Christianity. And it was really, really gave me language to understand my experience within the church. And then I think you guys probably, yeah, I saw you in my reels, at that point. Somehow Pagan Christianity and LARK came together
That
in
doesn't
a
surprise
moment.
me.
Yeah, yeah. To really help me on this journey that I found myself on, where you just offered so much space, judgment-free space, to really to kind of go through this process where I was really deconstructing so much, but within a safe environment, to process these things, and to heal, and also to give me sight, to see, and validate a lot of what I was seeing, because you'd already kind of been on this journey and experienced so much of these things yourself, and were so far ahead of me in that sense. And yeah, I started working for the first time. All my kids were in school. I started working at UPS, and which is where my husband works. I started loading trucks in the morning, and just began to unlearn and um, and learn for the first time, not for the first time, the gospel, but I began to see how that gospel had been twisted, and that it became untwisted for me, and I began to see things in a more human, not institutionalized, not establishment, not convention over the local body, and all these, structures that are in place to control all of these things. I began to see just a lot of freedom. The parables were huge for me in understanding who Jesus is, what his
I remember when
kingdom is
you
like.
I remember when you reached out and we were in just in your desire to just really dive in, rethink things. Like, it's almost like, if I could almost quote you, it's like, I've heard the word grace
Mm-hmm.
10 million times. I've heard it, I've heard it taught, I've sung it, but I've never actually felt free.
Yeah, yeah,
And I said, well, to me, what you're ultimately talking about is like getting back to the root, which is actually seeing the Father that Jesus revealed. I think that's where the gospel gets twisted.
yeah,
That's why all the talks of grace, right, rarely lead to freedom. It's
right,
because at the end of the day, this isn't a father who is gracious. He's a father who's transactional, is what we've been handed.
right,
right? Like he couldn't just love us because he's love.
Mhm.
He couldn't just choose to be gracious because he's gracious.
Mhm.
There had to be a transaction. There had to be some bloodshed to
Yeah.
appease some idea of wrath, right? Um, so was Jesus's death necessary? 1000%. Did it rebirth humanity? 1000%. But did he need to die to satisfy an angry dad? Did an angry dad have to kill his son so that he could finally forgive you? No. No, that part's not actually in there.
Right.
Right. And so when you
Right.
get back to that, right, you really start to see like, man, that's why all the talk of grace never led to freedom, because at the end of the day, we all lived with this fear of like,
Mhm.
he says he's loving, but it doesn't seem like he's that loving. Like there
Yeah.
had to be a transaction. So naturally, we therefore bring transaction, conditionality,
Mhm.
expectations, and determination, right,
Mhm.
becomes the matrix by which we see God and ourselves and others in the whole journey of faith. And I just remember like talking with you about that, and I was like, man, the parables are the best place to see him. Have you had a chance to like listen to that? And you were like, yeah, I've listened to all like 150 podcasts 3 times each while loading these trucks early in the
'Cause
morning.
that's all I had the time to do was to load trucks and listen to Lark.
Yeah, I was
And
like the
it
irony of
was
that was
yeah.
funny for me because I was discipled and became a believer in Jesus while working next to an old black man literally loading trucks in Tampa on a freight dock.
Yeah.
True
Well,
story.
me too. Me too, Russ.
Yeah. Yeah. You just kind of got like a bald white guy instead, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. And it was like, I don't know, it was like I met Jesus for the first time inside of me. He was no longer outside. He was inside of
Yeah.
me. And yeah, that time at UPS was like just this ultimate discipleship of unlearning all of this system and law, and entering into the reality and having, being brought into the heart of the Father for me. And I mean, there's a list of people that I could give shout outs to for helping to teach me those things. A lot of people
Yeah,
who
amen.
you have, yeah, who you have, talked about on your podcast, um, like Kruger and, so, but yeah, again, I was just taking all of this in and finding myself to being able to see, wow, this fruit that I thought I was bearing over here was actually fueled by anxiety. I was actually depressed all the time. I was all of the things that they were telling me were the voice of the Holy Spirit, or um it, it was actually what I see now is like the fostering of mental illness in people. Like, and I was being, through this message, this good news of my union, with Christ, m- my mind was being renewed. Um, and I was like coming into this like beautiful, um, awareness of my righteousness. I didn't even know how much shame and, condemnation that I was carrying. Part of that message of separation, you can't let go of the shame and condemnation. It can't be fully let go of. I started noticing that my actions were actually proving that I still believed that I was not fully forgiven, because I was still operating within this religious system to forgive myself. Like, I didn't even know how much of it was my own effort, my striving, my, um, in trying to make the truth of the gospel true through my actions. I was trying to make it be true rather than a faith to know it is true. Like this is just true. I began to be aware of his finished work and what that meant about who I am and my identity.
I think that's the greatest thing, right? Because you've already hit that the church was giving you this thought of like, but it's not finished yet. Like you
Yeah,
have to complete, like you've got to keep going. And that word is what's like my pinnacle with Lark of like the definition of finished. Once we believe it's finished and there's nothing more to do, I felt like that salvation is what finally, like, yes, I've been saved, but it helped me realize my salvation for the first time, the beauty of all of it. And I don't have to do anything else. And it
right.
seems like that same thing for you. It's like I still deconstructing words. I remember hearing Lark in 2020, going through everything. And then I was like, am I now saved? Am I just now saved? And it's like, no, I'm just now accepting the salvation that I have because it's finished.
Right.
You know,
Finally celebrating it.
Yeah.
exactly. And mourning
I
the
think
loss of years of doubt the entire time.
yeah, yeah. I think I'll just say this quickly, but I think that's why I really love the word lark, because a
Mhm.
lark is a joke, right? And that's what grace is. Like God in His grace, when you look at the gospel through that lens, what he's basically doing is he's it's a prank on religion.
Yeah.
When you think about it, like His move of grace, okay, in the world, in and among us, is a prank on religion, okay, played by a God who never followed the rules that we made for Him. He's like, you think that there's this transaction that's needed. You think that there's a love that's conditional here. You think that your
Right.
belonging is somehow in question, that I've somehow was never the very breath of the life that you've always breathed from the beginning.
Right.
You think that there's something that you need to do to bring to the table to either, in some camps it's earn it, in some camps it's right, just you have to be full of gratitude. In some camps it's you got to validate it through what you're doing. In some
Mhm.
camps, right, we got to go live out the gospel, which is absolutely impossible when you actually look at
Right.
what the gospel is, right, to achieve something. There's all these various camps that are out there, but all of them, what we're celebrating, right? What we celebrate at Easter is a God who played a prank on the religion that we thought
Mhm.
that he had to follow. And He goes, "No, it's always been grace. I've always been in you. I just had to come
Right.
down here and go through all this, not so that I could forgive you or so that I could love you, but to convince you that I always have."
Yeah. Amen.
It's a
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
lark.
Yeah. Yeah. And and I think that has really been the beauty of this relationship and where I um with Jesus, where um I love that he loves to convince me of his love for me. Um and um yeah, I think even with all of um the shame still that I can carry, it is constantly a reminder. I loved you first. I loved you first. I've always loved you. Um you don't, it's when I start to doubt that love for me, um that I really enter back in to um those spaces of control and just that religious kind of spirit, um is when I am not, uh when it's hard for me to be sure that he can love me because I am expecting him to be like me, to not be able to love um people that are difficult to love. And
And instead of searching for your belonging this whole time, this
mhm,
and or earning the belonging or finally
yeah,
stepping up the ladder into belonging,
mhm,
you're now finally told, I loved you first. You've
yeah,
belonged this whole time. And if
mhm,
your church within you can't give you that, it's the sniffing glue, right? These
mhm,
homeless people are showing you your belonging. You've never even met them, but they're the ones
right,
caring for you and giving you all your needs. And it just clarifies that belonging of like the neighbors that Russ always hits home on. And we don't know what that looks like. And it's so unique and rare in America too. But it's like, can you accept that a part of this, like he's already always with you? I'm with you.
mhm,
I see you. The same for everybody else goes around. I don't know. It's just the clarifying of that belonging without effort, without anyone knowing who you are, your credentials, or anything. You've had it
mhm,
this whole time. And now knowing who you are in definition in your relationship with Christ and finding peace with who you are, this
mhm,
credibility of your intelligence and this passion for justice. And it's really cool to see like this version of you, this person that you've stepped into. I really like it. I don't think it's difficult. I think it's really cool and exciting and it's attractive, right?
mhm.
You're not on the train and just
Yeah,
coasting along. Like
yeah,
you're finding it.
yeah, yeah. And the beauty too of this is like I am finding this same um longing or revelation in like in psychology, you know. So like I have a friend who is um who does mindfulness work. And so there's a lot of shadow work and finding your love and acceptance in the parts of you that
Yeah.
are maybe more difficult for you to accept yourself, and
Yeah.
finding that accepts me, even these parts of me that show up in ways that are unhealthy, you know, in ways where I'm like, oh, I need to heal all this first before I can truly be accepted. You know, I got to do this work on myself. Um, I need to be more self-aware. I need to be, this peace that I am already loved right now. I can accept my already acceptance. I can trust him with the pieces of me that are even hard for me to accept myself. That he loves me. I can, um, yeah. And so what I'm saying is like I am seeing that this is it works for humanity. It makes the most sense for humanity and how just we are. So like even back to kind of my deliverance, the way that I see that now with this good news of my union, it was like, oh wow, that was a really traumatic. I had a really traumatic life, you know. Um,
Mm.
and for some reason, from what I understand about emotions and body, what happened to me is a very normal experience for someone who has had a lot of trauma. It wasn't, I mean, when you don't understand it, it's easy to be like, oh, it was a demon, you know? Um, but the help that I've gotten from people who uh, are aware of emotion and the body and how we carry these things and just our humanity, um, how the brain works. You know, these are one of my friends calls it swamping. You know, like it is something that we do for the body to release the grief that you've held on to, and it looks crazy, but it is so healing. Um, and so even like these Eastern ways of understanding uh, or approaches to psychology, they have this emphasis like on union and like this divine love, um, that is kind of intersecting here, and for me, um, and and bringing about a lot of just that peace. Um, and support from other people, that have now come along, kind of this journey with me. Um, yeah, and willingness to let me share my story and it be very, very messy and me to process that with a lot of compassion for myself in the care of my understanding of God's, you know, love for me that is immeasurable. Um,
Yeah.
and that's been so beautiful. And these are voices that within the church I was not allowed to listen to, that are like actually caring for my humanity. Um, you know, yeah, they would have been outside the boundaries of comfort for our context. They would have actually been seen as pagan, which is interesting. The irony of 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 bringing in a system that is actually very worldly, and then finding a lot of um, support in spaces that I was told to be very afraid of, you know?
Yeah. Again, it just goes back to they don't they don't understand that there are people in this world who've awakened by faith, okay, to the God who's already made his home in us
Mhm.
through Jesus. Amen. And then there's lots of people in this world who haven't seen that yet or haven't believed that yet, right? Or who refuse to believe it. But it doesn't change the gospel,
Yeah,
that good news, right? Because
yeah.
there's no potentiality in the gospel. It's fixed news and it's good and it's for all.
Mhm.
And so it's crazy. Like in one camp, you have the name Jesus, but then you have this very muddied, right? Like undoing of the actual good news. And in this other camp, they don't they don't see it as Jesus or put name to it or tie the gospel to it, but yet there's this work of God's Spirit somehow at work within them that's showing them, hey, I'm here. I'm present in you. I already love you. You know what I'm saying? And so it's like
Yeah,
it's so wild to see that and to watch people's fear and
yeah,
how they could actually, help maybe even step into some of those things and help people connect some dots, put a name, right? His
yeah.
name to that. And but I just gotta say this as I've listened, to your story, the thing that hit me the most, and this is for just my own clarity. This isn't something I'm saying that, is for you or your story or whatever, because you've already
Yeah.
shared yours. But um it's when you ran back out to the homeless guy to tell him, hey, 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 just so you know, I'm a Christian too.
Right. We're
I
the
felt like
same.
your whole story is like summarized in that one moment.
Yeah.
Mm.
This searching for belonging, okay? Constantly searching for like true, unconditional belonging
Hmm.
in a lifetime of being taught that it comes through what you do.
Right. And who I love and who I'm
Right.
loyal to, committed
Exactly.
to.
So being able to assure him and assure this gentleman and to find a connection in that, and then to
Right.
watch the Spirit of God in him look back at you and just say, yeah, uh, I've always loved you. I
Right.
loved you first. Like that for me is
Yeah.
like the whole like one moment
Yeah.
of like it's right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is what I've been trying to show you,
Yeah.
Yeah.
man.
Yeah. I
It's
agree. I
amen.
agree. That's a good note to end on. I feel like I could talk about all the other ways that he showed up,
Yeah, he's good.
but he is good, and it is that simple. I loved you first. So freaking simple.
Really
Yeah.
is, right?
All this toiling for nothing, just to find out, yeah, I always loved you, so
Yeah. Yeah. You were never alone.
you were never
You were
alone.
never you were never not forgiven, not loved. I was never
Right.
not present.
Right, right. Yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
All these moments in our timeline where we think that we did the thing and got the thing, you know?
yeah,
Like, oh yeah, it was that moment that I confessed my belief,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
yeah.
Uh yeah, all the parts that I played in my salvation. Yeah, none. No, I didn't.
Yeah. Russ, when did you get saved? 2000 years ago.
Right. 2000 years ago on a cross where
Along
we
with
all
you.
died and we all
Yeah.
resurrected with
Now, are you
Christ.
asking me like when was the moment that I saw reality? Like when I
Yeah,
awakened to reality? Well, yeah, that happened on a freight dock in 1997.
yeah,
But yeah, you're talking about me uh you're talking about me seeing and enjoying reality. You're asking for that moment.
right,
Yeah.
I'm not asking for when did God make his home in me.
right.
Think about the the 10 million things that would change in the world if we
Mm-hmm.
just
Uh-huh.
grabbed that.
Can you just, yeah, yeah.
I loved you first. That's it.
Yeah.
Phew, man.
Mm.
Yeah, that'll if that didn't get your blood moving, I don't know what
Right,
will.
right,
Man.
right. Yeah. Yeah, you know, and it puts everything in perspective, like you were saying, you know. Yeah, there is a peace that comes with that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and an ability to just see things very differently. Um, yeah.
Amen. Well, Sarah, what do you think?
Just, I don't know, soaking it all in. It's so beautiful. And just in spite of this, I would say, really tumultuous journey you went on in discovering the simple truth of I loved you first. Within that, though, you learned to ask questions for the first time. You learned to raise your voice for the first time. You pretty much got in the driver's seat of a manual car, never being taught how to even transition into first, but you clunked your way through and you freaking figured it out. And now you get to equip your children with the same privilege to ask questions, to drive their own cars, to move forward in this journey of asking and wanting to discover and wanting to find. And that freedom that you're going to have as a mother is going to ooze into your whole family.
Mm,
You've grown like as much as he's been with you. And one thing that I keep repeating is the same freedom I found that you found, different wording of the moment of like, but I see you. For you, it was I'm with you. And I don't know about men, but I know for women, we don't need you to fix it. We don't need you to say, why did you let it happen? Or where were you? We just need to know, like, you saw me. And through all of that process, and he's going through it with you, you discovered so much of who Dani was. And
Oh
that
yeah.
just is it's so exciting to observe in your story and to watch in your story this like huge blossoming flower. Like you're telling this story which comes with so much like heartache and pain and drama, but the whole time I'm watching it, I'm like, I am literally just watching this flower just like open and freaking bloom. And
Yeah.
it's
mm,
it's just so
Yeah.
exciting and it's so encouraging through for anybody listening to this story to know how they're going forward and to know again like questions are so good and necessary. And I remember the first time I was allowed questions growing up as a younger child. One of the doubting Thomas. He didn't rebuke him. He didn't send him out. He didn't say like you should just believe. Your faith should be big enough. He opened his palms and showed him. And that in my tattooing experience with others,
Mhm.
everyone's baggage is, but I can't ask questions. But I can't ask questions. I shouldn't ask questions. It's faith is blind. And I'm like, no, no. You even had in the Bible the pure example of Christ accepting those who need just a little bit more information, who need to ask questions and understand it a little bit better. And
Mhm.
I think that that's powerful to have that freedom to be able to ask that
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. And that does, I mean, you asked that like earlier on, and I probably went down multiple rabbit trails, but just kind of where that kind of clicked for me. And it really, so it was for me in that internship, but it was meeting Jesus in the Gospels and realizing what family he had brought me into and what table I sat at. And it gave me, for someone who has struggled with fear and a very low self-esteem and confidence, it gave me such confidence and boldness to know
Mm-hmm.
whose table I was at, to be
Mm-hmm.
able to have a freedom to express myself. I mean, that's a kind of power that he showed me I have
Yeah.
in him, to be able to be authentically and uniquely myself and loved for how I am, like this, not like this other person. It was like I began to see I can just be myself. He loves me. I don't have to be someone else in order to be
Mm-hmm.
loved. And I mean, that was huge, because like I said, we were at this church for 15 years. For the first 10, I
Right.
didn't ask any questions. I conformed. I was a good girl. And I, as I began to know Jesus, as he began to reveal himself more and more to me and show me who I am, I began to have, yeah, just I began to be, it felt safer for me to express myself and the questions that I had. And actually to see, I've actually been like this. I was like this when I was a little girl. This got, this was, I had to suppress these things. And I've actually, I have come to love myself again as this little girl was before she was
Yeah.
suppressed, and had to hold everything back, um, for the approval of those who were, her caretakers. And so, um, yeah, to be able to let her come back out and heal and see that she was always loved and was actually supposed to be like that, because
Mm-hmm.
we're all uniquely made and gifted. Um, that has been so healing for me. And then to have a daughter who is exactly like how I was, and to look at her and be like, how could you ever think this isn't the best girl in the world? Like
Yeah.
I'm looking at her and I'm just like, you are wild. I could never crush that.
Yeah.
You're, I could never suppress this, when I look at her. And, um, yeah, I mean, yeah, like there's still a lot of work to be done. Obviously, I cry when I talk about these things. Um, but
No, but you're
yeah,
talking about like operating out of freedom.
yeah,
You've
yeah.
found the freedom,
Mhm.
okay, to be able to love and support, not fix your daughter.
Right,
Right.
right,
Right.
right.
That's
Yeah.
because I had a neighbor recently who was like, dude, at the end of the day, though, man, like, what does the gospel really do other than just give you some personal peace because you say you believe in Jesus?
Mhm.
And I'm like, bro, I'm just like you just gave like just that's one of a million examples
It
of
changes
just
patterns and cycles of trauma that
oh
have
my
been
gosh,
passed down from generation, and then Jesus shows up with
yes,
this goodness, and I'm like, oh my goodness, again, like, you were with me this whole time, and now I get to extend this same freedom, um to my daughter, to
yeah,
and she's going to have opportunity, and choice, and be able to drive the car, you know
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
and
and she's
yeah,
gonna need counseling.
and yeah, and she'll need counseling.
I always throw that in there. I share that with every parent just because
Right.
I'm like, at the end of the day, we are humans. So
Yeah,
if we're
that is true.
honest,
That is true. That is
all
true.
I tell my kids that I'm like, you probably could use some counseling because of the things that I've done. But I
That is
have two
true.
brand new grandchildren, right, from
Yeah,
my two oldest children.
right.
6-month-old little dude and a 3-week-old little dude now, and I've told both of them, and hey, guess what? You're gonna do your best, and those two boys are gonna need counseling,
Right,
Yeah.
right.
and they're gonna
Yeah.
do their best, and there's gonna be a little counseling that their children are gonna need to go
Right.
through because we're humans. But the beauty is like you get to walk in such a newer, right,
Yeah,
sense of freedom and
right,
joy,
right,
even in the midst of your natural struggles, my struggles,
right. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and
Yeah. And
that's
and
good
always
news.
learning how much more this freedom, um, uh, I don't know, like every day I am seeing how this freedom touches different spaces of my life that I
Mm.
didn't know,
Yeah,
so it's just constantly learning how his grace has brought freedom to me in all different circumstances. Um, yeah, in my marriage and raising children and friendships, with neighbors and yeah, yeah.
man. Hey, man. Well, folks who've been listening to this story, um, on behalf of them, Danny, let me just say thank you. I know Sarah's already shared that, but thank you for just sharing and letting us just listen in, right? Just to hear one more story of someone's journey of God being gracious and faithful, even in the midst of all the messy nonsense that's being thrown at us,
Yeah.
right? And then finding it and learning to walk in it does my heart good. And for those out there in the Raleigh area, you can find Danny playing pickleball now, instead of
Mm.
listening to sermons from pulpits. You can
That
also
is
find her
true.
not singing in church services, but you will find her singing at karaoke bars where
That is
she
true.
is building some really cool community and just passing on relief.
And someday streaming on Spotify under the power lines.
Under the power
Yeah,
lines.
under the power lines. I can't wait. See if I can't write a track that we can get on there.
OMG.
Put my skills to use.
Be careful, because earlier he said by the third time he claims it as his own. So
It's
don't
true.
give him any
That's right.
royalties.
Hey,
Exactly.
hey,
There's gonna be a lawsuit. Who came up with this name first?
I got to make that bread. Come on. Well, on a serious note, thank you. And
Yep.
it's been a joy for us. So
Yeah, thanks.
until next time, my friends. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers.